Doug Kyed, joined as always.
Today, unfortunately.
All right, hello and welcome to the NESN.com pregame chat. I'm Doug Kyed, joined as always by Zack Cox and Matt Chatham. Happy holidays to everyone. We've got quite a matchup, kind of a pre-playoff postseason game here today between the New England Patriots and the Buffalo Bills. Just to recap everything going on, if the Patriots win this game, they win the AFC East. The Bills will need some help, even if they do win this game, because the Patriots would also have to lose next week, and the Bills would have to win next week just because of some of that tiebreaker action. Also, if the Patriots win this game and the Chiefs lose to the Chicago Bears on Sunday, then the Patriots clinch a first-round bye in the playoffs. If the Patriots win out, then they get that first-round bye. So with all of that out of the way, let's actually dive into this matchup. And it is a very intriguing game with two of the best defenses in the NFL. I'm curious to see how you guys view this game, but I actually think the Patriots, everyone's kind of been saying all week that the Bills are built to beat the Patriots. I'm not sure if they're built to beat this Patriots team, though, that is so good on defense and hasn't been quite as high-powered on offense. We got our weekly Zoe. All right, so so I think that this is actually a better matchup for this Patriots team than some of the past matchups they had against the Houston Texans and the Kansas City Chiefs, who are a little bit more high-powered on offense, not as good on defense, because I don't think this offense is going to produce much, no matter who they're playing this year. But I think the Patriots defense can force some mistakes out of the Bills. So just big picture stuff right off the bat. I actually kind of like this matchup for the Patriots.
Honestly, going into this game, I think this is going to be a very similar game to the one that we saw back in Week 4 up in Buffalo. Obviously, the playing in Foxborough aspect changes things a little bit just with the history here. The Bills have never beaten Tom Brady in Foxborough ever since he became the Patriots starting quarterback back in 2001. That's games that Brady has started and finished, because there was one where he came out at halftime in there. But overall, Bill Belichick talked this week, and you can see it on the stat sheet. This is basically the exact same Bills team, especially the exact same Bills defense that the Patriots saw in Week 4, and that was Tom Brady's worst game of the season. And that was really kind of the, I don't want to call it the tipping point, but that was when we first realized that there might be some issues with this Patriots offense, because after that game, you remember Tom Brady's post-game press conference, he was really kind of down after his performance in that game, and it's sort of continued. It hasn't really gotten better ever since then. And then Tom Brady obviously has had some struggles in these last couple of weeks, especially last week in Cincinnati. I don't know. I think the Patriots are going to have a hard time scoring points and moving the ball against this Bills defense. I think the Bills offense is going to have an equally difficult time moving the ball and scoring points against this Patriots defense. So I'm expecting both teams in the teens, another close game in this game. I don't know, Matt, what's your read on this?
Yeah, I guess one of the things in research this week, I certainly had the perception, I think, that, wow, the Bills' defense has been gangbusters. They're kicking butt. This is an offense in the Bills that supposedly looks a little different than what we saw earlier in the year. I thought one of the things that, after I got a little deeper into it, sort of jumped out to me was, one of the things I think the Patriots' defense got knocked for a lot early in there, I think unfairly so, was just sort of a string of relatively light opponents. I would say that the Bills' defense over the last 6 weeks really played the Ravens probably as good as anyone has played. But independent of that game, they played a lot of bad offensive teams. So I think it's been a really nice month for them. When they're in a situation like the Bills have been, you're building towards something. They're not quite there yet. But I think what sort of the push away from the table, let's look at all units, all sides. Patriots offense is markedly better than the Bills offense. And I know a lot of the concerns with this offense, I think, have been relative to their past standards, which is, they're far below it. I mean, there's no question there. This is still a, lingering around 10th offense in the NFL. I think they can still easily, as they get these two-game stretch sort of finished here, be around 20 points a game. We're not talking 30s. Be a 20, be a 22, be a 24. This Bills offense over the last month has scored 80 points. This Patriots offense over the last month has scored 85, and 2 of those games are in a monsoon. Not monsoon in Philly, but super windy. So I think there are conditions that have brought things down and some reasons to understand why the Patriots are where they are. I think there's a lot more hope for where, say, the Patriots offense would be a month from now, if they're that far into the playoffs, than the Bills. I think the Bills are right up against their ceiling offensively. I would say Brian Daboll, the offensive coordinator over there, has done a tremendous job. You're looking at an offense that's John Brown, who was a complimentary player in Arizona, that has come over and become really a find for them.
1,000-yard receiver.
Become their top receiver. Beyond that, it's Cole Beasley, a rookie running back, a 39-year-old running back. I mean, there's not a lot of offense over there. So as easy it is to sort of poke holes in where the Patriots are right now, they're way ahead of this group, and I think they have a much bigger challenge than even the Patriots do against a Buffalo team.
I do find it interesting that the Patriots did beat the Bills 16-10, and the line in this game, Patriots only favored by 6.5. We'll get into that later, but you would think that with this game being at home, these teams really haven't changed that much since that Week 4 game, that line would be a little bit higher, but I think that says kind of where the Patriots are at this point in the season, where they have actually dropped some games at this point. But we are seeing two of the best cornerbacks in the NFL go up, obviously not against each other, but these two teams house two of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. Patriots with Stephon Gilmore, Bills with Tre'Davious White. Both guys coming off 2 interception performances last week. Found it kind of funny that Tre'Davious White was the one who won AFC Defensive Player of the Week when Stephon Gilmore had a pick six in his game.
Yeah.
And I think that they were looking at the matchup, which the Steelers are better than the Cincinnati Bengals. But when you're looking at offenses, Duck Hodges versus Andy Dalton, and I mean, at least Stephon Gilmore was going up against Tyler Boyd. Who was Tre'Davious White going up against in that game? James Washington or whoever the Steelers wide receiver was there. But definitely two very dangerous cornerbacks in this game. And Stephon Gilmore, front runner for Defensive Player of the Year, and for good reason, especially coming off of last week. So that's going to be a big challenge for the Bills to move the ball when you're talking about Stephon Gilmore across the field, because he's probably going to be taking on John Brown. From there, Patriots will be without Jonathan Jones with this game, the top slot cornerback out with a groin injury. Jason McCourty, questionable with a groin injury. He's been kind of up and down over the last 4 weeks. Didn't play last week. So he would be the guy to fill in at slot cornerback. If it's not him, you might be looking at Patrick Chung in that spot. They might have to really rearrange some things and have J.C. Jackson drop into the slot, have Joejuan Williams outside. So I will be interested to see how the Patriots handle Cole Beasley in this game, because he's their second best wide receiver, and he is that slot guy.
Yeah, that is the number one matchup to watch in this game, I believe, because as you mentioned, if Jason McCourty's back in this game, then it doesn't really change all that much. Jason McCourty has played a lot in the slot in his career. He's a very capable player there. And Jonathan Jones,
the last 2 years.
Especially the last 2 years. And Jonathan Jones has actually kind of struggled in recent weeks. He was really good early in the season, but has let up a lot of touchdowns in these last couple games. So if Jason McCourty can be in there, then everything's fine for the Patriots defense. If he can't, then you're going to see that cornerback depth tested really for the first time this season, because the Patriots have played games without Jason McCourty this season, but they haven't been missing 2 of their top 4 cornerbacks like they could be in this game, which could lead to some snaps for, as you mentioned, Joejuan Williams, who really hasn't played much at all as a rookie. He has something like 36 defensive snaps, been healthy scratched 7 times, so that would be a bit of a wild card to throw in there. Again, I mean, this Bills offense doesn't really frighten anybody, but if you're going to getting down to having to play a rookie cornerback with really no experience against a team that does have some solid players. John Brown's a good player. Cole Beasley's a good player. They've both had productive seasons this year. Dawson Knox, the tight end, has had a pretty good year as a rookie as well. Then you can it makes things a little bit harder to predict here.
The way I would look at it, guys, is I think Jonathan Jones has been tremendous throughout the season. I think it's one of the sort of undersold things that happened in last game. I remember the moment where he came out real heavy with that groin. I was like, this is a big deal. Like, you know,
he had to be helped off the field.
Groins linger,
the groins linger, and I'm like, that's a guy that plays an inside position, which is a lot of two-way go, where the groin's got to be good to go. A lot of times you can hide things like that a little on the boundary, but the bigger issue here is, you know, we're talking about the Bills game, obviously, but we really need to keep an eye on where that goes moving forward. Sure. I don't think it matters much this week. Now, it's not a good thing. You know, it's not a good thing, clearly, but I think I would go even a step further. We'll see if the Joejuan Williams thing ends up being, it's a completely plausible scenario. Another way to do it is to simply play Jaron as your single high safety and allow Devin to come down to the slot, or even Patrick Chung. I think that's something to always consider with this group. Even though Chung is technically a strong safety, he covers slot people pretty constantly. And the unique thing that, again, I hate to go into this since we're just really bagging on the Bills offense. I think it's pretty impressive that they've gotten to the point that they've gotten to. But that's not an offense where you worry about the third option. I think Isaiah McKenzie is generally their third receiver.
Andre Roberts,
Robert
Foster,
potentially. Robert Foster, which was a story last year. He's barely played for them this year. But they often come out in a lot of two tight end stuff. You mentioned Knox. Tyler Kroft is the other guy. There's a decent amount. Occasionally Lee Smith will be out on the field. But the point of it is you oftentimes, the second person who would be the slot isn't necessarily a slot. You know what I mean?
That was certainly the case last week. Actually, this season, the Bills have had at least 3 receivers on the field on 80% of their snaps. But since Tyler Kroft came back, they haven't played
Kroft comes
more
back, now you have 2. So the point of is the second receiver is a slot when there's 3 receivers in the game. When there's only 2, he can be extended and have to be guarded like a regular. Beasley out extended isn't a problem for any defensive backs in this team. So just think of that sort of in context. We'll all watch as the game goes along what personnel groups they come out with, but having 2 defensive backs down, I think hurts this group least against this particular opponent. If you had 32 to choose from, it would probably be this opponent. Yeah. And I think the depth that the Patriots have built in the back end is very helpful here because, like I said, you do have a safety that can come down. You do have a strong safety that can also guard there as well. And you have a guy in the wings in Jawan Williams that I'm really excited to see something from. His only issue would be it's not necessarily a week where there's a great matchup for him, right? You bang him in there, and John Brown's a smaller, faster guy. There's not like a tall and long, which is sort of Jawan's makeup.
It would potentially be Dawson Knox. So we kind of, when the Patriots drafted Jawan Williams, I think a lot of people expected him to take on someone that was more athletic tight ends. So maybe you do see the safety, Patrick Chung, covering the slot receiver, Cole Beasley, and you see the corner covering Dawson Knox, because really, Dawson Knox has been good, but it's 2 rookies we're talking about here, so it's not like it's the toughest matchup for Jawan Williams to step in there.
Real quick thought here before we bail out of this. I think as you watch the Bills' offense and the plays that break for them when they're winning, so they're getting to that 17 number, they're getting to the 20 number. A lot of these are sort of drives that are renewed because Allen breaks a pocket, starts running, or these guys have a decent relationship. Beasley, especially on broken plays, getting himself open. So that's really the challenge for a guy like Jawan Williams. It's not can I cover him initially? He can cover. It's not can really any of the guys we mentioned cover him initially. It's the broken plays. So when things break down, do you fall asleep? Do you remember to sort of execute that word we've been saying for 3 months? So I think that's the real challenge today. It's not can they. Of course they can. It's on the extended plays that Josh tends to be pretty good at. Do you fall asleep in your coverage?
Patriots head coach Bill Belichick made a good point this week, and that's that you can't really have extended offensive drives against this Bills team because eventually they will make a play. Tom Brady, as you mentioned before, worst game of the season against the Bills, and it hasn't really got that much better since that point. He started out really hot in the first 3 weeks of the season, but his play has tailed off, and maybe that's the offensive line, maybe that's the offensive weapons out there, but this could be a game where the Patriots need to have some big plays, and they have to prove that they can put up those big plays. We saw one last week, the Rex Burkhead long run, but I am interested to see how this Patriots offense does move the ball. I think they might have to generate some points out of their defense, but big plays could be a factor in this game, so that's something that we might actually see them doing, is trying some of those trick plays that we've seen in the past with flea flickers or a double pass with Edelman or Mohamed Sanu, just to not have those extended drives where the Bills can actually make some plays on defense.
Absolutely, and really most of the big plays that the Patriots have been able to generate of late have been those trick plays that you mentioned. It seems like weeks that we've seen just a receiver getting open on a post and catching a ball 30 yards downfield. That just doesn't really happen much for the Patriots. They're relying so much on those trick plays and on plays like the screen passes we saw to James White early on in that Bengals game. And with that stat, I mean, the one that Bill Belichick mentioned this week, that it's really hard to stage extended drives against this Bills team. They rank near the top of the NFL in points allowed per drive, yards allowed per drive, plays allowed per drive, scoring percentage per drive. Patriots are first in all 4 of those categories, by the way. But they also don't allow big plays. They also rank near the top of the league in 20-plus yard passes allowed, 20-plus yard or 40-plus yard passes allowed. So it's kind of it's not a team that you can just go out and say, well, we can't grind it out against them, but like it'll be pretty easy to get over the top. This is a difficult Bills defense to combat, and it's why they've been so successful this year. It's why this Bills team that has only scored 30 points twice all season, both of those against the Dolphins, only scored more than 25 points 4 times, and they're 10-4 entering this game. It's because of that defense.
Yeah, the defense is very impressive, I think, in that they're built really well at all 3 levels, guys. And we don't usually say this against a lot of the groups the Patriots face. We come in here and do our little bit, and we can talk about, really good rush front, really good secondary, a little weak in the linebacker level. This isn't that weak. I think really all 3 groups are relatively strong. Mikheil Harry in the back end is a really good sort of plays deep field, but they can be a box guy too. Tackles really well for him. So you talk about the difficulty breaking plays. It's generally because they come down and keep the 5s to 5, as opposed to the 5s that break and go for 13 or more and things like that. So they we talked enough about White, but you get to the mid-level, I've got sort of a little watching tape football crush on Matt Milano. I think he's a really good player. Tremaine Edmonds, is the big, tall, long guy that everyone notices. Matt Milano plays alongside of him. They play a lot of 2 linebacker stuff. Lorenzo Alexander's a really good older pro, but they end up in a lot of sub stuff generally where it's 4-man line in front of them. And you see Milano and Edmonds alongside one another. Edmonds generally gets a lot of the talk and shine because he was a higher drafted guy, young player. But Milano from BC here locally, he does some things where he can really be sort of a nuisance. Covers pretty well. I actually like his ability to get into the line and sort of stop plays more than even Edmonds. So this is a phrase that Coach Belichick would always use with us. He talks about a guy you got to get blocked or he'll ruin the play. There are so many across that front, from Ed Oliver, who's a rotational guy, from either of their two ends, Murphy being one, or really it's hard to even find the other end because they'll move him and put him inside. And
Jordan Phillips having a great year.
Jordan
Shaq
Phillips
Lawson.
having a good, Star Latulele. I mean, they're loaded in their front, but the front can be blocked, and they have had some games where they've given up some stuff on the ground. But I think Milano is the guy you have to find because he has a tendency of he doesn't kill anyone because he's a small guy. He's like a safety that's like wearing a linebacker number. But he tends to sort of ruin plays. So I think he'll be the guy that, you need to get off and doubles and get him, or he'll end up tackling something and keeping it short. So it's just going to be a tough go, I think, today. But I think there should be some optimism out there about where this offense can go. Let's look for some isolation plays with Mikheil Harry. We spent 3 weeks sort of talking about other stuff. Mikheil isolated against the other guy. Help me out. Levi
Wallace.
Levi Wallace, the guy opposite Tre'Davious. I think there could be a great week to build a formation one way, especially knowing Jules is a little banged up and not knowing if they would use the asset of White on him. Get Harry and ISO against Levi and see what happens.
That leads us to this week's keys, and mine is just quickly big plays. And I think Mikheil Harry would be the guy to do it because he actually has that playmaking ability. He's got some run after catch ability. I think that if you can get the ball to him in some creative manners, then maybe the Patriots could string together a big play or two in this game. And as we mentioned, that is how to beat the Bills. Even though teams have struggled to do it, you just can't put together those long drives. So what's your offensive key?
My offensive key is kind of one that we've talked about a lot in recent weeks, is that you need those secondary guys to step up, like Mikheil Harry, like Mohamed Sanu. I can't picture this being a big Julian Edelman game, both because of his health. He was really limited last week. He had his worst statistical game.
2 catches, 5 targets, 9 yards.
Yeah, and there's been all sorts of reports about the severity of his knee injury this week, and that coupled with the fact that he's probably going to be going up against Tre'Davious White on a lot of his snaps, not expecting a big day for Julian Edelman. And then those linebackers that you just talked about, very good in pass coverage, very good at kind of limiting, as you mentioned, keeping the 5s to 5s. I don't know if this is going to be a big James White screen game either, so you're going to need guys like those secondary wide receivers to step up. I think that Mikheil Harry made a lot of strides in the last game. I don't know if we've been overrating it, the fact that, because he only had 2 catches in that last
touches,
game, really wasn't that big of a factor on the overall score, but great step in the right direction for him. I think he needs to take another step forward today.
I think if you were to look, if you're sort of sitting here in post game, we're trying to figure out how it went down and that it went well for the Patriots and they got themselves into a mid-20s or higher number. I think you would have to have hit on a lot of catch and run. To me, that's catch and run plays don't have to be trick plays. Right. It can be quick looks, it can be screen passes, it can be slants, it can be crossing routes that hit low. I think crossing routes are something that we started to see a little bit more of. Sanu on the fumble, unfortunately, would put on the ground against Cincinnati, but they have really good catch and run guys. We just haven't seen them all on the field a lot together. I think White or Burkhead or Mikheil, now, we've seen the fades are fun, the downfield balls are cool, but watch this guy when they just show him and throw him a little bubble screen and let him run. Let him be the punt returner he was in Arizona State. So I think the catch and run has to be something for them. I think they're uniquely skilled in that. We just haven't seen a lot of it, but that part has to hit, and they have to be really good on early down running. Early down running has been something that, roll it back to the Philly game. The last time somebody really put it on this defense for the Bills, it was a 31-point game. It was productivity from Sanders and even a little bit from Jordan Howard. So it was a game where they got him on screen game. They got him on 4 and 5 and 6 yard runs early, and then Wentz was able to sort of pick apart after that. But if the Bills start blunting you up front, and you get just minimal gains on catch and run, it's really tough sledding. Win on those two areas though, and there's a lot there.
My defensive key is pretty easy, and that's make the Bills pass the ball, because that's that's what the Patriots certainly want them to do. Stack that line and trust your secondary, even if you are down, John Jones, even if Jason McCourty can't play, you've still got Stephon Gilmore back there, J.C. Jackson. Those are really the two most dangerous cornerbacks, stats-wise, of the last decade that any team has had. You've still got Devin McCourty, Patrick Chung, Deron Harmon, Lawtown in that secondary. So trust those guys, stack the line, make them pass the ball, because that's how you can force some turnovers and force some mistakes out of the Bills' offense.
Yeah, I'm on a similar page as that. Going to point out a guy we haven't really discussed much, and that's Devin Singletary, who has taken over for Frank Gore as that number one running back in Buffalo.
It wasn't there the first time.
Really, the only change to this Buffalo team is that Devin Singletary was not there in Week 4. He is there now. He's 6th in the NFL in both yards per carry and overall rushing yards in the last since week 9, I believe. He's been very productive in the second half of this season, and the Patriots had some issues stopping the run in that first game. I mean, the tackling was really rough for them on a couple of those long Frank Gore runs. Gore had a 41-yard run. He had a 28-yard run. Josh Allen had a couple of nice runs before he got knocked out of that game. And Josh Allen, even though he's not running quite as effectively as he was as a rookie last season, still one of probably the second best rushing quarterback in the NFL behind Lamar Jackson. If you take that aspect out of the game and make Josh Allen throw to win this game, Josh Allen is it's undeniable that he's a better quarterback this year than he was last year. His stats across the board, I mean, his completion percentage is up 7 points, adjusted completion percentage up 8 points, his passer rating is up something like 20 points, still down near the bottom of the NFL in all of those categories, which really tells you what level he was playing at last season. He's taking care of the ball a lot better lately, but he's still... If you're the Patriots, you want the ball in Josh Allen's hand, try and beat you in this game.
Yeah, and I think it's a weird week here to be having this conversation because a lot of the arc with him was sort of positive. He threw for 130 yards last week, threw a really bad interception in that Steelers game that kept Pittsburgh in the thing. And again, I'm basically Mike Key is really along the lines of what Zach has said here. It's got to be pocket control with him. You just can't let him. This is one of the guys of like Russell Wilson escapes around the back. Deshaun Watson can boot and run. You talk about Lamar Jackson, he can go anywhere, but Josh Allen's thing is really just running back down the fronts of pockets and taking off, and it's like a 400-yard runner just darting his way through. And Jonathan Jones isn't there this week to knock him out. So. But it's pocket control and then the big plays. It could come from Singletary. It could come from a broken play with Beasley. It could come from falling asleep on a double move with John Brown. But I think you just have to play everything top down, make that offense go 15 plays, and you'll be fine.
One more point that I would just want to make before we get to our Chatham choices here. Josh Allen, 14 fumbles this season, second most in the NFL. Only lost 4 of those so far, so he's been pretty fortunate with that turnover luck in that department. Also been very bad under pressure.
Really long.
So in this game where the Patriots might need some short fields to score some points, get after Josh Allen in that regard. Devin Singletary also fumbled twice back in that Pittsburgh game. I could see a similar scenario to what we saw in the Cleveland game playing out, where you get turnover, and then immediately the game's just over, kind of over right away. So I think that's definitely going to be something to watch for.
Especially since Josh Allen really hasn't been throwing as many interceptions as of late, especially since that Week 4 game against the Patriots. So let's get into Chatham's choice. The line is Patriots 6.5, and the over-under is 37.5. So how are you feeling on this game, Matt?
I actually feel both. I feel two things are appealing. I'll give you one. The 6.5, I think, was derived by common opponents. You guys, I know what the last game was. It was very close. It's right on that 6 number. I thought the interesting thing as I studied this a little more is, when we usually don't talk about games where the AFC East teams are playing each other late and it's meaningful. Yeah. But what happens in situations like that is you played all the same people, right? The Patriots have played all the same people. They played Washington. They played Pittsburgh. You go down the line virtually with all these similar opponents. The difference between the way the Patriots have played and the way the Bills have played is pretty dramatic. 10 points more, 17 points more, 21 points more in a lot of situations. I think the gap between the teams is very real, but they got to play that way today. And for that reason, if you end up in a 1 score, I don't think we'd be very surprised. So I think they would cover, but my recommendation is actually going to go as a little bit of a fade on the public today. I'm going to tell you to go on the over. I know a lot of the action around the country has been on the under. Everyone here is expecting a low-scoring game. I am too. This is going to be a sub-40 in my mind, but I think it'll slide in right around that 38 range. The week started at 38.5, and it moved down to 36.5 some places. We're going off the 37.5. I wouldn't be surprised if this is like a 39 or 40-point total, but you'll still hit on the over. That's my recommendation.
In my mind, I mentioned earlier that I'm envisioning this very similar to how Week 4 played out. I think it's going to be a very similar type game and a very similar type score line. So I'm going to go under, and I'm going to go Bills to not win but to cover.
I'm going Patriots to cover. I actually think that they win this game pretty handily. I've thought that before, and the Patriots have lost this season, so we'll see how it all goes.
Keeps our toes.
I do think that this is a pretty good matchup for this Patriots team, especially since that offense really has struggled for the Bills. So that will do it for this week's NESN.com pregame chat. Follow Matt on Twitter at Chatham58. Follow Zach at Zack Cox NESN, and follow me while you're at it at Doug Kyed. Keep it on NESN.com for all of your Patriots coverage.
Happy holidays.
And happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everybody.